Good morning. I'm going to be singing a song that none of you have heard. It's called What Does the Smile of God Look Like? And Mary is going to play for me, and we hope. She says we hope. Okay. What does the smile of God look like? Well, it's our smile bestowed on others. Every day we travel on God's road of love. You meet a stranger down upon his luck, and a smile might make his day. If you will only give it back what God gave you to give away. His gift to you, a heart so full of love, you know you have to share with friends and family every day, even some that do not care. When you do this, blessings open up, pouring favor on your day. If you will only give it back what God gave you to give away, give it away, give it away. The Bible tells God's people, give it all away, give it away, give it away. The Bible tells God's people, give it all away. This earthly journey we call life is filled with grief and pain, a heartache now and then, yet we still praise His holy name. And when the times get rough and the troubles mount and you think your day is done, give the man upstairs the glory, and the devil hasn't won. Hit it, Mary. What does the smile of God look like? Well, it's our smile bestowed on others. Every day we travel on God's road of love. You meet a stranger down upon his luck, and a smile might make his day. If you will only give it back what God gave you to give away, give it away, give it away. The Bible tells God's people, give it all away, give it away, give it away. The Bible tells God's people, give it all away. Give it away, folks. Our reading today from Moses 3 and 4. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush has not burned. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how Egyptians oppress them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He said, "I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain." But Moses said to God, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am." He said further, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this my title for all generations. Go and assemble the elders of Israel, and say to them, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have given heed to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. I declare that I will bring you up out of the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us now go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God.' I know, however, that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will perform in it. After that, he will let you go. I will bring this people into such a favor with the Egyptians that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Each woman shall ask her neighbor and any woman living in the neighbor's house for jewelry of silver and of gold and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, and so you shall plunder the Egyptians." Then Moses answered, "But suppose they do not believe me or listen to me, but say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.' The Lord said to him, 'What is that in your hand?' He said, 'A staff.' And he said, 'Throw it on the ground.' So he threw the staff on the ground, and it became a snake. And Moses drew back from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Reach out your hand and seize it by the tail.' So he reached out his hand and grasped it, and it became a staff in his hand, so that they believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." Again the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." He put his hand in his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, as white as snow. Then God said, "Put your hand back into your cloak." So he put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his body. If they will not believe you or heed the first sign, they may believe the second sign. If they will not believe even these 2 signs or heed you, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become the blood on the dry ground." But Moses said to the Lord, My Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now that you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who gives speech to mortals? Who makes them mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak." But he said, "Oh Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "What of your brother Aaron and Levite? I know that he can speak fluently. Even now he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will be glad. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. He indeed shall speak for you to the people. He shall serve as a mouth for you, and you shall serve God for him. Take in your hand this staff with which you shall perform the signs." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
We're a people struggling with hope. Sometimes we struggle to remember that God remembers and sees and hears and delivers. See, we want to be talked to just like Moses was talked to, and we'll take part of it. We'll take a vision or a voice. We don't need both. I'm here to tell you this morning that we do have a living God. And he's come through again. I studied Friday night, and I had all these hours of studying, and I went to bed and I said, "Lord, I need you to come through because I've got nothing to say on Sunday." And on Saturday morning at 4:45, I just started writing and writing and writing and writing. He comes through every week. So I live Exodus 3 very personally. See, I've become so dependent on God to work through me that I have nothing without God. And every week I go through, I'm not sure that I have the analysis that I need. I'm not sure that I have anything personal that you can attach to and make it your own. And every week I question, am I the right person for the job? And I'm sure that, I've told you this before, that I had trouble with it when we had to go online because I wasn't sure that I wanted the public to hear me, and I sure did not want it to be recorded and posted so that it's part of public record on the internet. Do you question your ability, your thought process, your courage? Do you go as far as Moses did and say, "No, send somebody else"? It was a vision in my East bathroom that changed my life in August of 2018. See, in August, the Missouri Conference had an opportunity for laity to take classes from St. Paul's School of Theology for 2.5 years, 10 classes. But you had to commit to this by reading several books and writing a paper, and it was due 2 days before my son's wedding. My son's wedding was a local wedding with 225 people. And I, during the month of August, still had regular consulting work during the week, and I preached at 2 different churches that month. I had torn out the fence at the farm, and if you tear something out, it's your responsibility to help put it back together. And I wanted the farm to look good, and it was a friend's house that was doing the reception, so I was helping with the reception place, even putting Christmas lights in a tree. And I had this deadline. And if there was any time to say not now, it would have been then. On August 26th, about 2 weeks before the wedding, usually it's Sunday morning, 7:30 is when I get up. At 6:30, I feel that nudge to get up. I go in the bathroom and look out that window, and the sunrise is coming through, and with the tree on one side and the dark clouds, there's the face of Jesus I mean, there's the hair, the eyebrows, the mouth, the mustache. It was so real. And I went and grabbed my phone, and of course, it moved. The clouds moved enough. And I was so excited about after church, we got back, and I immediately take colored pencils and I draw it out. Because I thought, this was for me. Because I was trying to decide, do I do this or not? Do I throw in the towel? At the beginning of 2018, I went to this conference, and somebody says, you need to read this book. This book is Just Get 'Em Through Till Christmas by Margie Briggs. I bought it, put it on the shelf. Here we are, December 2018, a few months after this vision, and I finally take that book off the shelf. And at the beginning of one of those chapters, there is a picture that looks exactly like I saw and drew. But this lady had seen it out of her west porch window. She's a 50-year-old business lady like me, laity, that was called to preach at Drake Chapel, Missouri, and I had just been called to preach at Dockery Chapel, Missouri. I slammed the book shut. It was like, I do believe that God speaks to your heart. I don't believe that you can always communicate effectively what that vision or what that image is to somebody else that for them to get how powerful that is. But I do believe He speaks to the heart. And I wanted to say, wait, again, I want to see it. I want to see it again. I want to see it longer. I want to have more time. But why can we be so sure that Moses saw this vision of a burning bush? Because it changed his occupation and it changed his purpose. Now, if God would have given him that vision 40 years ago, I'm doubting that Moses would have had that many questions. Moses is 80 years old when he gets this vision. He is a shepherd. Now, in that first 40 years, right, he'd been raised as a prince. He was bold and confident and strong, and he was used to managing lots. He could probably manage army troops, and he could manage projects. But now all he's managing is sheep. And he rarely talks to anybody, and he knows what his current reality is. He sees his body. He doesn't have the strength. He doesn't talk. Back when he was young and when he was in Egypt, it did not end well. He saw himself, at some point he had figured out, his mother had finally told him that he was a Hebrew, and he saw himself as the deliverer of the Hebrews. So this scripture today started in Exodus 3, but the story, don't miss, in the last half of Exodus 2 gives us the reason that he's in the Midian desert. Because it is in Exodus chapter 2 that we find out why he left Egypt. See, Moses had this rage when he saw an Egyptian taskmaster beat a Hebrew slave. And this slave looks up at Moses as he's being beaten, and he has this look of mercy, please help me, and Moses gets involved. Because Moses' nature is get involved. And Moses beat that Egyptian taskmaster and beat him to death. The Egyptian slave ran away, and no one's looking, so he buries the Egyptian in the sand. The next day, Moses goes back to the scene of the crime. And he sees two Hebrews hitting each other and beating on each other and having a fight. And he says, "Why are you hurting your brother?" And they say, "Who are you to say? What are you going to do? Are you going to kill us too? And he immediately knew that they knew what he had done. And if they knew, then Pharaoh would know. And so he made a run for his life. And that would continually play out in his brain of that incident. Because did he not have blood on his hands? Was he not a murderer? The third time he thinks that he's going to get involved in a situation is he had escaped and got clear on the other side of Mount Sinai, and he's in the Midian priestly nation, and he stops at this well. And when he stops at this well, he notices these 7 sisters come up with their flock, and then there's some shepherds that start bullying these girls so that they can't get to the well to water the flocks. Moses' nature, get involved. He takes care of the shepherds, takes care of the situation. Those girls get their flocks watered, and they're home early. And the father's like, how'd you get home? Why'd you get home so early? And they said, well, this Egyptian helped us. And the father said, well, you've got to go get him and bring him here because we need to feed him and thank him properly. Well, Moses didn't have any place else to be. There's a combination of comparison between Moses and Jesus. Moses was a foreigner in Egypt, and now he's a foreigner in Midian. He has no place to lay his head. Jesus, remember, it says in Matthew chapter 8:20, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Well, the father of the daughters and Moses, they become friends. And from that, Moses has a place to work, and Moses gets a wife. So here we are 40 years later, and he's seeing this burning bush. And you know, when he saw that burning bush, it answered a burning question that he had in his mind. The God of Abraham is real. See, he had been brought up Egyptian, and the Egyptians, they worship lots of gods. And his mother, the Egyptian mother, said, well, those Hebrews, they worship that God of Abraham, but he has deserted them. And yeah, he remembered that he had been taught some things by the mother that nursed him, but that was a long time ago. He didn't know couldn't remember all those truths that mother had taught him. So his fear when he sees this burning bush is much greater than his faith, because he barely knows the God in this burning bush. But he did know that when God wanted him to go back to Egypt, he was only seeing human obstacles. He was only seeing it from a human perspective. And he knew that there was taskmasters every few feet with those Hebrew slaves, and that they treated those slaves like beasts. And he also knew how the Egyptians in the palace thought about those Hebrew slaves, because see, those Hebrew slaves, they were key to getting all of that empirical projects done of building and the canals in the land. He probably knew the new Pharaoh pretty well. He probably grew up with the Pharaoh in the palace. And it says in Exodus 2, verse 23, that the king of Egypt died. That's significant. The new Pharaoh is in charge. When this Pharaoh dies, the Israelite slaves finally find their voice. Their rage, their resentment, it finally has this insistent force of energy. It finally makes a difference. And what it amounts to, when you read the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3, you're seeing where God says how he heard the groanings and the cries. See, before this, they must have been just silent, that This is our life. This is our reality. This is our oppression. And they must not have even cried out to God, but it is when the Pharaoh dies that then they call out to God. And that is important because it is the cry to God that evokes the care. You see, God is hearing. It is in the raging cry of assertion that it terrifies the empire, Pharaoh's empire, because he's hearing from all these people, and it mobilizes the holiness of God into action. He heard the cries from heaven. He remembered his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to bring their descendants back into the land of Canaan. Looking down upon them, he knew the time had come for their rescue. See, God heard. God remembered, God saw, and God knew. This same powerful God hears you and sees you and knows you. Notice the cry to God comes before the action of God. While Moses asks the questions at the burning bush, God answers 4 of the questions very patiently. This is a bush that's burning that's still a living bush. This is the unusual in the midst of the mundane. Don't miss it if you have the unusual in the midst of the mundane. When you're doing normal work and it suddenly turns unusual, it's God at work. Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Well, notice verse 12 of chapter 3. God told him, "I will certainly be with you, and this is the proof that I am the one who is sending you. When you have led the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God here on the mountain." And I think that's interesting. Notice that the sign will come after the people have been delivered, not before. It's as if God is saying, you'll see that all along your life I've been with you, but it requires a step of faith first by you. He's asking Moses to take one step of faith, and then you'll see. Moses, he's questioning his adequacy. Who am I that I should go? Now, when you feel inadequate, stop looking down and look up at the one that fills you, because he's the one that makes you enough. Second question Moses asked, it's about his knowledge of God. He says, if I come to the Israelites, I say to them, the God of the ancestors has sent me to you. And they ask, what's his name? What shall I say to them? In the answer, God establishes that he is the God of now, and he will be to Moses and to his people something undefined that is more than words can express. He's the eternal one and the ever and becoming one. And he wants Moses to understand, before I give you my name, I want you to understand I am who I am. This statement comes before God will give his name. See, this I am statement bridges the being to us. The power of the I am statements is that God will be whatever we need him to be. And we don't really understand this until we hear it more from Jesus in the book of John. You know, there's 7 statements in John's writings that Jesus says, I am. It's also interesting how Jesus uses this very text to explain who he is. You want to understand Jesus as God, read the book of John. Look particularly at John 8, 56 to 58, when he's having this conversation with the Sadducees. And they're asking a question about marriage and heaven and all that. And Jesus answers this question, and he says he was with Abraham, and he was before Abraham. And then Jesus calls himself the I am. Go to Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. God also said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, the Lord," now this is Lord, all in caps, if you're looking in several versions, "the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever and my title for all generations." Now the reason I say that, Lord, all in caps, that is what translators have changed it to. It used to be YHWH. See, the Hebrew text was all consonants. It didn't have any vowels, and so we have put vowels in it, and we called it Yahweh, and then some translations have made that Jehovah. But do you know that the only one that heard how it was correctly pronounced was Moses himself? Because after that, it was considered so sacred that no sinful lips should ever say it out loud. And they would write just the 4 letters. God then predicts the future. And he tells them, "I will destroy Egypt with my miracles. And the Israelites will plunder the Egyptians before they leave." God is clearly making it known, I know the future. I will be with you. You have to go to chapter 4 to see his third question. The third question that Moses asked, "But suppose they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.'" Again, Moses is so centered on himself. But you have to understand, he doesn't want to be rejected again by the very people that he thought he was to be a deliverer to. He remembers how it went when he was in Egypt and he tried to do it. Remember, this man is still wanted for murder. That is part of the reason he is so afraid. God answers his question by saying, "What is it that you have in your hand?" And he has that rod. He said, "Throw it on the ground," and it becomes a snake, and Moses jumps back. It's real. He picks it back up, and then he says to Moses, "Put your hand in your cloak," and it comes out, and it's got leprosy. Now, leprosy, they did not have a cure for this, and the gods that Moses had learned about, they considered this a curse from a god. And he put it back in, and it's clean. And then he says, the other thing you'll do when you get there is you'll take water from the Nile River, and you'll put that water on dry ground, and it'll change to blood. The significance of that is that the Nile River was the lifeblood of Egypt. And God is communicating, "I am even sovereign over the Nile." See, God can use our ordinary tools for good. And a lot of times our tools can be a bridge in helping somebody else understand. Some of us have the gift of hospitality, so maybe it's our mixing pans and our baking dishes that are our tools. Some of us have gifts with children, so maybe toys are the tools. Some of us build things, so those are obvious tools. Some of us work to solve problems for others, so maybe our computer is our tool, but our tool can bridge that people are seeing that you're using something and it becomes more because it is being glorified by God. And I get that from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. It says, "Whatever you do, do everything for the glory of God." Still, Moses had a fourth excuse. Moses pleads in verse 10 of chapter 4. "Oh Lord, I'm just not a good speaker. I never have been, and I'm not now, even after you've spoken to me." In this version, it says, "I have a speech impediment." In the version that we read on the screen, "I'm slow of speech." But God, he gives the answer that I refer to often. And I love this. God says, "Who gives speech to mortals? Who gave you a mouth to speak?" Who makes them mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak. And that's what he does for me every week. And it's interesting that this is also an admission by God that he does give handicaps of blindness and deafness. He does allow for those human frailties, that human brokenness, that broken vessel, that less than perfect person. And when you look at 2 Corinthians 4:7, but we have this treasure in jars of clay so that it may be clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God and does not come from us. See, when we're broken, and that jar of clay is more broken and has more imperfection, you see more glory directly, that it's God's glory coming out. See, when you tell your Creator that you're unsuitable for work and that you have weaknesses, that's no excuse, because it is in your weaknesses that God can be glorified all the more. It dawns on me how much God has to deal with this problem of using us broken vessels as speakers every Sunday morning. Because every Sunday morning, he's got to equip us to give us the words to say to you. But that's how he wants it. See, he doesn't want me to come up with my own solution of what to tell you. He wants to be involved in what it is to tell you. Don't miss his call. If you feel a nudge that he is calling you to do more than you think you can do, that's a good sign it's God. Because he wants even more of the glory in those situations. Because our true God has made it clear all the way through this beautiful book that he uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. The one thing he is not patient with, though, is our inflexibility and our lack of availability. Notice the fifth reason Moses gives is actually the real reason. Moses says, "Oh, Lord, my God, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. See, inflexibility is a cover-up for disobedience. And know that you can make God angry when you say no. Our living God has asked you to take action in this mission field. He has placed you here for a reason, and he wants your availability. He wants you to show up. He'll give you the words to say. He'll give you the things that need to be done. And we have seen it time and again in this place with the prayers that we have prayed, and he has answered prayers, and he has given miracles to his people right here in this congregation. Amen. See, what blessings are we leaving on the table when we're called to do the Lord's work and we say, too busy, too old, I don't know how to do it. Ricky Rogers says, strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't. See, we live in a community that needs to hear and see and feel and understand that the treasure that we have, that we just handle so haphazardly, that is a precious treasure. And God has given us a purpose when he has made us a child of God. He has immediately put a call on our heart to take action. There are too many people in this community that thinks God has forgotten them. But we need to help them see that God does know them. They have to take the first step of faith to draw near and obey. And maybe they need our help to understand that. But we can pray with them, because it is in the prayer, in the cry to God, that God delivers. Amen.
Where love shines through.
Lead us and guide us, Lord, to the burning bushes. Lead and guide for us to see where you are at work in the mundane of the day-to-day. Help us see and hear and understand that you are calling us to action and that you will give us words to say right when we need them. Help us, Lord. Amen.